Okay, so now we're going to explore the code. If we search Adventure Land GitHub, we can clone that to a local repository. There's plenty of guides and tutorials on how to set up VS Code, which is what I'm using here, and how to use GitHub. So the GitHub repository that we've just downloaded contains not all, but a lot of the useful behind-the-scenes code that we can explore and use to generate our own code and develop our own methods and functions. So first, let's explore the use HP and MP function. I'll copy and paste that from the code in our game, and then I'll use Control Shift and F to global search for that and where it occurs in the repository we've got. As you can see, it turns up in a few files. The file that is of interest to us is runner functions. As you can see, you've got the examples folder, and that's just examples of what we could do with our code. But in terms of how those functions are actually being executed behind the scenes, this is the code for that. So now let's look at the particulars of the HP and MP function. What we can do is explore them further. Okay, let's have a look at the ms since, which is presumably milliseconds since. We'll check the existing code in the repo and see what it says there. We can see that it's not actually defined in this repository, so let's see how we can explore it otherwise. So what we can do is we can go into our console. So on the Mac, I think the shortcut is Command Options and I, and probably on Linux and Windows it's Control Shift and I. So in the console we can type in console log ms since, and you can see it returns the actual definition of the function, which is really handy for us. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll paste it into the file we're using, so we can just see it for quick reference and explore it there. VS Code also provides like handy linting, and you can see the colors change, which makes it a lot easier to read than in the console. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this just to make it a little bit more readable. You may have noticed I've saved this as a .ts file instead of a JS file, which is a TypeScript file. It's largely the same as JavaScript. It just means I can write a few extra elements here to make it clear as what's going on. So, for example, I'm going to type this argument t here as date because I know that it's going to be date by looking at the code. Similarly, ref is also going to be a date because I can see that they're using the .getTime method on there, and that's a method associated with the date. It wouldn't work if you tried it on anything else. I can also see on line 4 that we're checking with an if with the exclamation mark ref, which is basically a check to say if ref doesn't exist. So we can see from the usage on line 11 here that the milliseconds since function is used with one argument, so we've got last potion. So that suggests to me that we're sending it the time, because we know it's a date, that the last potion was used. And we can see from the function on line 3 now that we're passing the last potion as the first argument. We don't have a ref argument in this case, it's undefined. So what's happening on line 4 is the ref argument is being updated as a variable to contain the current date. That's what new date in brackets does. And then on line 5, we've got ref.getTime, which gives us basically the number of milliseconds since a reference date in like 1970. So if we do ref.getTime, that's going to give us the number of milliseconds between the time that we're given in the reference, which is the current time, minus however many milliseconds since 1970, and then we're going to deduct the number of milliseconds to the time that we've provided of the last potion. So what you're effectively going to be doing is so what line 5 is going to return is the number of milliseconds between the reference time and the current time. And then if we look back at line 11, we see that what we're doing is we're saying milliseconds since the last potion is less than the minimum, and then the min is provided 2 arguments, and what that does is return the smallest of the 2 arguments. So it's either going to be 200 if 200 is the smallest, or it's going to be character.ping times 3. So if character.ping times 3 returns a value of 100, we're going to have 100. So basically this if function on line 11 is saying, is the millisecond since the last potion less than the minimum of 200 of the character ping? So in some cases this function will check whether the millisecond since the last potion is less than 200, which is presumably the minimum frequency you can use a potion. That might represent the cooldown period.